You stand there, staring into that diner, and the night feels heavier, like the air itself forgot how to move. A man hunches over his coffee, holding onto it like it's a lifeline. A woman in a red dress sits nearby, bright but distant, as if her body's there, but her heart already left. Another man melts into the shadows, barely bothering to exist. Even the server behind the counter looks like he's been there so long he might actually be part of the counter itself. And then there's the light, that hard, almost cruel glow spilling onto the dead sidewalk. It cuts through the dark but doesn't warm a thing, only makes the loneliness sharper and the silence heavier. The curved glass wraps around them like a fishbowl, showing the whole sad little world inside. And weirdly enough, it's beautiful. Beautiful in that kick you in the gut kind of way we all, just like vanilla, secretly love. This is Nighthawks, a moody and on the surface kinda depressing scene, but why do we like it? To know everything, we need to rewind back to a time when Edward Hopper was quietly reshaping the way America saw itself. Nighthawks didn't just come out of nowhere, it came from years of Hopper watching the world through windows, from a distance. His style was dark, cinematic, and almost voyeuristic. You get the feeling you're eavesdropping on lives frozen mid-thought. Whether it's diners, gas stations, or half-empty hotel rooms, Hopper's world is made of places where people pass through but never truly belong. Philosopher Elaine de Botton called it the art of threshold spaces, the weird lonely zones between where you're coming from and where you're going. Hopper's paintings hit even harder because they mirror what America was becoming. After the wars, the country was booming. Shinier cars, fatter wallets, bigger dreams. But underneath the gloss, people felt more isolated than ever before. Hopper caught that tension, that lingering background noise, better than even a high-tension lingering background noise-catching machine could. And he inspired legends like Alfred Hitchcock and Mark Rothko without even trying. Ironically, Hopper hated being labelled as some American scene painter like Thomas Hart Benton and Grant Wood. "I always wanted to do myself," he famously said, brushing off partisan critics. At the centre of it all was something far more personal. Hopper didn't paint America, he painted himself, the places inside him where words didn't quite reach. His wife Josephine once joked that talking to Eddie, as she teasingly liked to refer to him, was like throwing a stone down a well and never hearing it hit the bottom. You see, that silence is his work. In painting after painting, couples share the same space but seem stranded on different planets, sitting close enough to touch and somehow light years apart. You can almost feel it, the way Hopper's own silence bled into every canvas, but that heavy quiet didn't just appear one day, it has deeper roots. To really understand it, you have to go even further back to a skinny boy growing up along the Hudson River in the little town of Nyack, New York. Edward Hopper was born there in 1882, the second child in a middle-class Baptist family with Dutch roots. His dad, Garrett, ran a small shop that always seemed one bad mouth away from folding, but he loved books. His mother, Elizabeth, had a soft spot for art and encouraged young Edward to chase whatever magic he found with a pencil in his hand. By the time he was 10, Hopper wasn't just doodling, he was signing his drawings like a kid quietly marking his claim on the world. Still, growing up wasn't smooth. Hopper was tall, awkward and shy, the kind of kid who could probably disappear into a book without anyone noticing. He had enough self-awareness to joke about it in his sketches, poking fun at his lanky frame. But his real dreams were bigger than small-town sidewalks he grew up on. When he graduated high school in 1899, he didn't just toss his cap in the air. He drew a picture of himself in full gown, marching towards a distant mountain labelled Fame. And underneath, he scribed 5 words that almost felt too honest. Out into the cold world. Bless. Chasing that distant mountain meant trying different paths. After some mucking around at illustration school, Hopper enrolled at the New York School of Art. He spent 5 long years there sharpening his craft, and under the mentorship of Robert Henry, who believed art should punch you right in the gut. Hopper finally started finding his voice. Then the next big chapter, called A Job on a Farm. Actually, it was an ad firm, followed by a trip across the Atlantic to the place where every dreamer at the time thought magic lived. Glasgow. Actually, it was Paris. Paris wasn't just a postcard dream for Hopper. It hit him like a freight train. Walking through the galleries, the 24-year-old was dizzy with everything he absorbed. There was the cool, detached woman in Edouard Manet's A Bar at Folies Bergère, looking like she checked out of her own life. And then there was Edgar Degas in a cafe, with its strange cropped angles that made you feel like you were spying on something private and sad. Hopper drank it all in, the voyeurism, the loneliness, and the way a single frame could figuratively hum with quiet tension. But it wasn't just Paris that shook him. In Amsterdam, Rembrandt's The Night Watch knocked the wind out of him. The way the light carved through the darkness, the way every face burned with a kind of private urgency, it left a mark on him, deeper than any lesson in a classroom ever could. All of this, the sharp light, the shadows that seemed to whisper secrets, the stage-like feeling of life being watched but never touched, started to brew in Hopper's own mind. He already had a fascination with theatre sets and the magic of film, and now these new influences folded right into it. Slowly a style was forming, one that didn't shout but pulls you in with a heavy, unnerving quiet. You can feel it when you look at a painting like Intermission, 1963. A woman sits alone in a movie theatre, bathed in heavy silence. She isn't watching anything. Her eyes drop, lost somewhere only she can see. A sharp shadow cuts across the wall beside her like a physical weight. Over to the side, you can just make out the corner of a stage curtain. But no actors. No movie playing. Just that heavy pause. And that's the thing about Hopper's best work. It traps you in a moment where nothing and everything is happening at once. Intermission doesn't just ask if she's waiting for the next scene. It makes you wonder what scenes she's already lived through, what battles she's sitting there trying to quietly survive. That stillness, that thick pause between things, became a kind of signature for him. But still, Hopper's early career was a slow burn. Just when you thought he'd hit a breakthrough, he'd be back to square one. Yes, his first painting made it into the legendary 1913 Armory show, but it would take almost 10 more years for another one of his works to sell. It wasn't until 1920, when Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney, the founder of what became the Whitney Museum, gave him a solo show at the Whitney Studio Club, that Hopper got his first taste of recognition. But that show sold nothing. Zero. Zilch. Fast forward to 1924, and at the age of 44, Hopper found himself once again walking into the New York's Frank K.M. Wren Gallery, this time with a stack of watercolours under his arm. The gallery gave him a second solo show, and this time it was a different story. The show sold out completely, and with that success, Hopper walked away from the commercial illustration work he'd been doing to pay the bills. The art world was finally starting to catch up. That same year, he married Josephine, an artist he had reconnected with just the year before. Jo, as Eddie teasingly called her, had studied under Henry just like Hopper, and their relationship would prove to be both deeply passionate and complicated. Jo wasn't just a muse, she was his intellectual partner and an integral force behind his public image. She kept his accounts, managed the business side of things, and played gatekeeper to critics and journalists. It was Jo who crafted Hopper's legend as the reclusive artist, an image that Hopper didn't fight too hard to correct. He was content with his introversion, and she made sure it was carefully preserved. Jo's role as the intellectual peer and fellow painter was more than just supporting her husband's career. Hopper painted her time and time again, but often transformed her into something else entirely. A showgirl, a lonely figure by the sea, or a movie theatre usher. His paintings were full of complicated women, sometimes brimming with vulnerability and unease, particularly around themes of sexuality. In 1959's Excursion into Philosophy, for instance, we see a man sitting beside a bed, his back turned to a woman whose form is barely visible, reduced to her legs and bare buttocks. The man, hunched over, seems defeated, trapped between ideas and desires that never quite deliver the satisfaction they promise. But not all of Hopper's women were tragic. In A Woman in the Sun from 1961, Jo takes centre stage as a strong, muscular woman, worn down by the weight of her world. The light streaming in from the window doesn't just illuminate her, it casts a sombre, almost spiritual glow, as though she's caught between the earth and something far more transcendent. So we can see that Hopper's paintings have a way of reaching deep inside us, creating a quiet yet powerful feeling. There's always a bit of tension, something that feels both far away and right there in front of you. This mix of clear and unclear stories in his work gives it a timeless feeling, even though they're often linked to the mid-1900s in America. Art historian Deborah Lyons said it's Hopper's simplicity that lets us fill in the details with our own lives. He leaves enough space for us to connect, even if we don't fully understand what's going on. That ability to connect is why Hopper was able to stay relevant as a figurative artist, even when abstract expressionism took over New York. The art world was moving away from traditional styles, but Hopper quietly stuck to what he knew. His mastery of mood, light and shadow earned him respect from even the leading artists of the abstract movement. Mark Rothko, one of the biggest names in abstract expressionism, said, "I hate diagonals, but I like Hopper's diagonals. They're the only diagonals I like." That respect shows how Hopper's work cut through the noise of the time. You can see this balance of realism and abstraction in one of his later works, Western Motel, painted in 1957. In the painting, a woman in a burgundy dress sits alone in a simple motel room. The room is empty, but through the large window you can see a world beyond. Rolling hills, a green car, and a suitcase hinting at her journey. The scene might feel lonely, but it also feels freeing. It's not always about sadness, it's about the possibilities of being alone. The woman seems at peace, like she's on the open road, ready for whatever comes next in the vastness of America. Hopper's ability to capture this feeling of solitude is what makes works like Western Motel so powerful. It's not just about being alone, it's about what you can do with that alone time. All his paintings give us a glimpse into the freedom of solitude, a moment where the world feels wide open and anything is possible. But Hopper's real genius showed brightest in Nighthawks. In that single frame, he captured something even deeper than solitude. He captured isolation sitting right there in plain sight. Four strangers share the same harsh fluorescent space, yet the silence between them feels almost louder than words. It's the kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone, but from being surrounded by people and yet feeling invisible. A feeling that defined modern city life then, and perhaps even more today. With Nighthawks, Edward Hopper painted the heavy, aching quiet of modern urban existence. If this glimpse into Hopper's world hit you or someone you love even a little, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel and stick around, because there's a lot more where this came from, let me bloody tell you.